بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة على رسول الله. نرحب بحضورنا الكريم في الجلسة الثانية من جلسات نادي الموارد البشرية للعام 2021. إن شاء الله بإذن الله اليوم جلستنا راح تكون جلسة غنية بالمعلومات المفيدة، وخاصة في موضوع تجربة الموظف ومدى تأثيرها على استراتيجية المؤسسة 21. طبعا اليوم إن شاء الله يشرفنا أن يشاركونا في هالجلسة شركائنا في شركة كونسنتريك. طبعا عندنا اليوم الأخ إلياس ديب المدير التنفيذي من منطقة الشرق الأوسط، والأخ ديمة دمشقية استشاري تشكيل الثقافة وارتباط الموظف بالعمل. وطبعا راح يدير الشركة الجلسة إن شاء الله السيد دوين همام مستشار القيادة العليا في الشركة بإذن الله. طبعا إخواني الحضور بس بعض المعلومات العامة اللي حابين إن شاء الله يحصلون على الشهادة في الجلسة. في أسفل شاشة الجلسة في رابط باللون الأحمر مكتوب عليه سيرتيفيكت، تضغطوا على هذا الرابط وإن شاء الله راح تطلع لكم الاسم والإيميل. وأيضا بإذن الله إذا في أي أسئلة تحطونها في الشات بوكس اللي موجود على الشاشة من صوب اليمين. إن شاء الله راح نشوف هاي الأسئلة وراح نرد عليها بإذن الله في آخر الجلسة. نتمنى لكم جلسة مفيدة إن شاء الله، وإحنا متأكدين إن شاء الله راح تكون جلسة مثرية وغنية. وحين أحول الكلمة للأخ دوين همام. I shift it back to you, Dwayne, for you to moderate the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salwa. Hello, my name is Dwayne Hamam. I'm a leadership advisory expert with Concentric in the Middle East, and we are a Spencer Stewart company that helps organizations identify what drives people within those organizations to execute their strategies. We have over 50 years of expertise in organizational culture, engagement, leadership assessment, and development, as well as HR advisory services. This really enables us to help organizations globally and in this region change from the inside. So with that said, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome and thank you for joining and participating in our webinar. We would also like to thank the Federal Authority for Government Human Resources for providing us this platform to connect with you. Some brief housekeeping before we begin. Please do keep your microphones on mute. For any questions or comments that you do have throughout the presentation, please feel free to type these in the chat, and if we do not cover them in the presentation, we will try to address them at the end. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Elias Dib and Dima Dimashkia. Elias and Dima, would you please introduce yourselves further?
Thanks, Dwayne, and hello, everybody. And I spent the last 12 years in consulting and in HR consulting in particular. I'm pleased to be joining you today along with two of our best talent, Dima and Dwayne. Dima, off to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dima Dimashqiye, and I'm a lead consultant for Concentric's culture and engagement practice in the Middle East. I'm delighted to share some of our latest insights with you today.
Great. Thanks, Dima. 2020 has definitely been a disruptive year. Dima, why don't you kick us off and share what our research and insights tell us about that?
Sure, thanks, Dwayne. So we all know that 2020 has changed everything everywhere. It's changed the way people think, the way they feel, even the way they act and their expectations and their desires. 2020 has fundamentally changed the way that organizations are engaging with their employees. Now, the employee experience, and this is a term that we'll be referring to quite often throughout our discussion. The employee experience, as we know it, has never seen so many drastic transformations in such a short span of time. To start with, I'll start with what we mean by employee experience to begin with, a basic definition. When we talk about employee experience, we're referring to all the aspects that an employee goes throughout his or her employment life cycle. So from the time they are interviewing with the organization to the time that they leave and all the moments in between, that you can see around this wheel. So employee experience is made up of moments that matter for employees. And when I talk about moments that matter, I'm referring specifically to interactions or events that shape employees' time with the organization, and moments that mainly impact their performance. So these can be both positive or negative moments that will be remembered over a long period of time. We all know employees are having experiences every day, and we know that these experiences shape their behavior, shape their engagement, and ultimately their performance. The more positive these experiences are, the more likely it is that the employee will interact with the customers and colleagues in a constructive manner that adds value to the organization. But the opposite is also very true. So on that basis, organizations need to make sure that their employees are having more of the right types of experiences. They need to be deliberate in curating the right experiences for them. Now, why is this important? Because if organizations don't identify and measure and improve these defining employee experiences, then they run the risk of employees losing motivation and connection. And that has serious organizational implications. So let's be very honest. 2019's employee experience looks nothing like the employee experience of today. The talent management practices look so distant and foreign. Many things changed over this 1 year, but one thing remains true as ever, is that leaders now need a constant flow of information on the employee segments that matter for their organizations and the moments that matter for those segments. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but first, let's start with our first polling question for the session. I want to ask you all to please log on to menti.com. You can log on through your browsers or any mobile device, or you can just scan the QR code that's found on the right-hand side of the screen and enter the code at the bottom. By scanning the QR code, you can just lift your camera and it will open in a separate browser. So let's start with the first question. Please select the top 3 moments that matter in terms of priorities for your organization as you think ahead to your 2021 strategy. Okay, we see some questions starting to come in. So IT systems, direct manager interactions, these are the top moments that matter in terms of your organization's priorities.
So Dwayne, maybe you would like to remind people how to go to Menti and what to do.
All right, so
I was on mute.
response is coming in. At the top, you give some instructions. Go to menti.com and use the code at the top of the screen that you can see here. So majority of people on the call are saying, 21% are saying that work-life balance is one of the top moments that matter for your organization in the coming year. Followed by training and development, 17%, well-being, of course, at 17% as well. Let's give it a couple of more seconds. Okay, work-life balance still seems to be tipping the charts. Training and development. Oh, interaction with leadership and well-being. All right. I think we can close the polling now. It's interesting. So work-life balance, training and development being the top priorities, followed by interactions with senior leaders as well as well-being. So it's essentially, you know, each organization can have different moments that matter as part of their priorities. If we move on to the next slide, When we look at 2019 data, when we looked at the employee experience in terms of the employee segments that matter the most and the moments that matter the most for them, you can see here that performance management, strategic alignment, and onboarding moments really topped the charts. These moments were especially important for the employee segments that are high potentials, high performers, and leadership pipeline. In 2021, though, Concentric's data so far shows that interactions and communication with senior leaders is, in fact, the #1 most important moment. And we know that showing care and concern and making employees hopeful for the future had the biggest impact on employee well-being, especially in the last 12 months. So since last year, we've seen the rise of the criticality of certain employee segments, such as remote and virtual workers. This comes as no surprise. It was ranked at number 17, and now you can see it as the number 9th priority. It's really interesting that 1 year ago, only 8% of organizations considered remote workers to be the most important employee segment. And well-being was a strategic lifecycle stage for just 20% of the organizations. So talk about rapid change and disruption. So today what we want to do is we want to share with you 3 actions to succeed during these disruptive times. And we want to explain why the employee experience should be a key enabler for all of your strategies. We're basing our recommendations on the kind of work that Concentric does and our experience in helping major clients across the world and the type of assistance that they usually require. We know from our pulse surveys that we've conducted throughout 2020 and the start of 2021, we've gathered data from over 850 HR executives and professionals. And we noticed that 8 out of 10 almost employees felt positive about their employee experience during the initial stages of the pandemic. However, we really believe that these scores are artificially inflated, and that's due to the extraordinary circumstances that we're all undergoing. We also started to see these scores decline significantly in the last few months, and we really expect them to fall even further to levels like those seen in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Because for many employees, challenges including increased stress, higher workload, less human connection in general will really lead to emotional overwhelm and burnout. For organizations, enabling leaders to navigate through this uncertainty by accelerating hybrid strategies and evolving your HR is key. So without further ado, let's dig deeper into what organizations should do today to stay ahead. In a nutshell, organizations must move fast to adapt and reassess the way they think, measure, and lead. I'm going to go through these 3 actions, starting with the way organizations should think about the employee experience. So the way you think about the employee experience is really important, because if thought about correctly, you'll realize that it has a lot of power to connect to your organization's strategy and its purpose. It can also increase employee engagement, which we all know has a direct impact on business results. But thinking about the employee experience can be challenging if it's not directly connected to solving an organization or talent issue. It is this connection in particular to the organization and to talent matters that is most important. So how should organizations be thinking about the employee experience? First and foremost, we live in very uncertain times, and it's more important than ever to have a clear purpose that will inspire and motivate employees. That's why it's important to always start with strategy. You have to be clear on the problem you are solving for, and you have to make sure that this problem is important to your leaders. Organizations need to be thinking about what kind of specific experiences people need to have right now to ensure that their employees are deeply engaged and aligned with the organization's purpose, mission, and even values. In fact, the #1 most cited goal by organizations is that employees need to connect to the organization's purpose and align with their business strategy. That's a moment that's really worth investing in when it comes to the employee experience. Second, organizations need to identify the employee segments, as we've seen before, that have the highest ability to deliver on organization results. So think about who are the most critical employee segments within your organization that are capable of delivering on your business strategy. Finally, creating a differentiated or an extraordinary employee experience doesn't happen by coincidence. It's a result of very clear strategic decisions that are taken across the entire employee lifecycle. More than that, it's about constantly delivering on the promises that you make across the moments that matter for the segments that matter. So our third suggestion is to be intentional about the experiences you want your employees to have. Think, what kind of experiences do we need to offer to our employees today so that they can deliver the biggest impact to our organization? I want to ask you to go back to menti.com for the next polling question. So go to menti.com or just scan the QR code on the right and enter the code 38696761. So the code is the same.
Again, also feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we will be sure to address them at the end of the session. I see some coming through. Thank you very much. Again, if you want to use the menti.com in your browser, very simple. You can use your camera phone to use the QR code, or once you go into menti.com, you can enter the code as indicated.
So the second question is, how would you describe your current personal employee experience in just one word? Avoidant, tough, perfect, wow. Promising, challenging. We see challenging being the most repeated word. Average, adaptive, worried. Okay, so a few more responses coming through, but challenging still tops the charts. Okay. So thank you for your responses. Basically, this is the result of your own personal experience. You're describing it in just one word. Most of you think the work experience is challenging. Others think it is good. It's a hardworking environment, or it is average. So let's consider the second action that I want you all to think about, which is measurement. There are three ways to enhance the way you measure. As we talk about some of these methods, it's useful for you to think back at the kind of engagement surveys you are currently running in your organizations at the moment. First and foremost, organizations need to get purposeful about their measurement strategy. So what does this mean? It means asking yourselves, what are the most important moments for creating an engaging employee experience at your organization? What do your employees need today to feel safe, productive, and engaged? Second, generic measurement usually gets you generic feedback. So what we're suggesting here is having a specific hypothesis-driven measurement, because that solicits much more actionable suggestions for you and your leader. If history repeats itself and the change curve is true, then the experience of employees is going to get more difficult, and leaders will need ongoing insights, suggestions, and faster feedback loops. With the year 2020 demonstrating just how fast the world can change, annual employee engagement surveys have quickly become a thing of the past because they result in generic insights and not enough agile actions. The future of measurement means more efficient and faster measurement with better intent to support more targeted action. This is actually what we refer to as continuous dialogue. And it's facilitated by more frequent pulses that allow organizations to form hypotheses and cultivate specific actions in a much faster way. So we support organizations at Concentric to pivot towards more agile employee experience conversations that deliver insights that are instant and that trigger clear action into the most important factors of the employee experience. So Ilyas, why don't you talk to us about leaders and their role in driving employee experience?
Thank you, Dima. So now our third theme is going to be leadership. And as we already mentioned, 2020 has really been a significant employee experience, a really disruptive one, the way Dima was explaining it to us. And we've seen organizations implement all sorts of changes. In fact, if I quote some of the CEOs we've been speaking to, they've been mentioning that the amount of change they were able to implement at the beginning of 2020 was equivalent to what would have taken them 3 years to implement. From our data, we've also seen some extraordinary changes in the employee experiences in the last 12 months, which are mostly about senior leadership. Now, before we dig into priorities for leading, I want to ask you once again to log on to menti.com. We're going to give you a couple of minutes. Please log on to menti.com once again and answer another polling question for us. So you can see on the screen the code. Please go on menti.com and try to answer. And as you think about leadership and the employee experience in 2021 and beyond, what are, according to you, the most important leadership capabilities that organizations need to deliver a great employee experience? So please select the leadership capabilities you believe are needed by leaders going forward in order to drive a great employee experience in 2021 and beyond. And this is going to be the era that's going to be labeled the post-vaccine world. Resilience, inspiring and engaging, building relationships, inspiring and engaging the organization is going to be remaining on the top. And we've seen a lot of leaders during 2020 and at the beginning of 2021 showing the caring, the compassionate behaviors for their organizations. And this is, as Dima was alluding to, what has helped increase employee engagement, combined with all the activities that were done by the HR departments and the agility that was shown by the HR departments. So inspiring and engaging the population and the overall organization and building relationships, it seems, proved to be the most important one for your organization in the coming period. Talent development is also topping the chart with quick decision-making. And this is a leadership behavior, decision-making quick and thorough and accurate decision-making was required from leaders all across the last period, and it seems this is something that is going to be required in the coming period as well. Empowerment. So definitely we see the softer side about engaging the overall organization and building relationships with the various stakeholders of the organization is going to be on the top of the list. So thank you, Dwayne. So in 2020, a majority of us drastically shifted the way we work by moving to remote working. And this has led to an increase in virtual relations and in virtual interactions. At the same time, we all are still trying to manage our work-life balance, which is more difficult for us on a personal front, but also it is as difficult for the people that we manage in our organizations. Now, although this trend of virtual work was already happening frequently pre-COVID, the pandemic and the lockdowns greatly accelerated the transition to working remotely. And from our research, we found out that the likelihood of a more permanent shift towards working virtually is going to continue in the short to medium term. So this new world, this new post-vaccine world of work requires significant changes. It requires significant investments in order to sustain productivity, performance, and organization success. In addition to the obvious reliance on the new technologies for hosting and enabling interactions and flexible work routines, which is 50%, concentric research shows a clear understanding that investment in developing leadership capabilities is equally critical at the moment at 49%. So the way we used to lead cannot be the way we lead into the future in 2021 and beyond. We have also time and again established a clear link between employee engagement and the leadership behavior. So now that we're asking employees to be more engaged, we're asking our employees to be more productive when working from home, how we lead them and how we deal with our employees cannot be the same as it was before. The expectations of the leaders from their employees and from their organizations has definitely evolved. And as more employees are getting used to managing their own work-life balance, the expectations from the leaders is that they are now less controlling, but more enabling. The expectation from the leader in today's world is that they are less directing and more supporting to their employees, and less transactional in the type of work they do and more inspirational for their organization. Now, fortunately, our research shows that many leaders have become aware of this. If we consider just the perception of the senior leadership spreading hope, spreading positivity across their organization, this went up significantly by 14 points above what was normal prior to 2020. In terms of the organizational requirements, there are also positive trends. The concept of agile decision-making, went up by 30 points in 2020 as compared to what was considered normal in 2018 and 2019. 30 points in just 1 year. And this is a trend that will be a baseline requirement for the leaders going forward when they plan for the rest of this year and beyond. So did this evolution in leader characteristics pay dividends to the employees and to the organizations? Well, we also know from all our ongoing surveys that employees in the last 12 months were more engaged than ever before. And this is what Dima was trying to talk about initially. And this is largely because leaders were going the extra mile. They were giving extra efforts. They were showing caring attitude. They were communicating. And they were trying to build relationship with the various levels of the organization. So leaders were actually making the effort to connect with the employees, thereby positively impacting the overall employee experience. Add to that, the data from our 2020 Pulse surveys also identified that the most critical behaviors for creating a great employee experience can be summarized as inspiring and empowering the teams, creating those emotional connections that I was talking about, and demonstrating agility. Again, the data tells us that these are no more nice to have. So this is not nice to have. This is the minimum. These are differentiating factors, and these are now the core requirements from leaders in the new world. So how did successful and engaging leaders demonstrate these behaviors in the last 12 months? One, they connected very well across organizational levels, and they stabilized their organization. They communicated, they acted with clarity, they showed confidence, and they were at the same time transparent. They checked in with their organization on a regular level, and they listened to the wider employee base. And to top it up, they leveraged digitization in doing whatever they were doing. They maintained a necessary balance, a balance between the agility or the speed, but at the same time, the need for careful planning. They maintained the necessary balance between managing the unknowns and the uncertainties that we were all facing in the environment with building confidence that they have a clear direction and they have clear control over the organization and everything that's happening around them. Okay, so we at Concentric, we have crystallized these insights into an engaging leadership model. It's a very simple but very effective framework for identifying what successful leaders need to demonstrate or develop, what we call that special spark to drive the right employee experience. We have collected insights from 8 million responses from 8 million employees in our database, and we've conducted about 1,400 interviews with leaders. And we use these insights, and basis that we're able today to present to you the core 3 dimensions and the 5 simple behaviors engaging leaders should adopt in 21 and beyond. And of interest in our global context, these engaging leaders should demonstrate these behaviors much more during the tough times. So at a high level, engaging leadership is made up of 3 dimensions. First, engaging leaders are driven by a strong set of core guiding beliefs. They have their own core guiding values and beliefs that are shaped by their personality and by their experiences in life. These beliefs guide how engaging leaders approach their work, and more important, their behaviors and their interaction with the people they lead. These core beliefs include ideas of servant leadership, meaning they are there as leaders to serve the organization, to serve their clients, to serve their employees, which is the belief that leadership is a responsibility, not a status, which is a belief that leadership is a responsibility and not a reward, and that relationships, emotions, and trust matter very much for their organization. Second, engaging leaders learn from critical experiences. Throughout their careers, throughout the previous years, they have certain experiences that shape them. Engaging leaders have looked for experiences that transform and stretch them and shape their core beliefs about people, shape that core belief about work and about what it means to lead and to be a leader. So while no experience is identical, these leaders, they seek experiences that require deep learning from taking on tough assignments, okay? So especially those that require dealing with ambiguity or difficult changes. And finally, engaging leaders display behaviors driven by these beliefs that we talked about and by these experiences. The specific behaviors that have a direct significant impact on the engagement of others and the employee experience are 5, okay? 1, engaging leaders act in a way that clearly stimulates others' engagement. It builds their purpose, it engages others. Those engaging leaders, they energize their teams in the way they communicate their vision for the future of the organization. They do it in such a compelling way, and they work on inspiring the individuals so that they can do better. So it's the stimulation, they stimulate, they energize, they engage. Second, engaging leader propel people forward. So they lead the ship into the future. They lead from the front. They show their people the direction for the future. They solve the problems. They take personal accountability to get things done. They take tough decisions and they drive the organization forward when others do not. The third characteristic is that engaging leaders also act in an emotionally stable. They are humble and they have a consistent manner. Okay, they walk the talk and they set the right example behaviorally for others to follow. In another sense, they are the anchor. They are an anchor for their colleagues, for the employees in the uncertain times. In other words, they stabilize their organization during uncertain times. 4, engaging leaders also take time to build the relationships and to relate with their colleagues and others. They build, in fact, very strong relationships. And these are genuine relationships. Why? Because they care about others. They listen to them. They spare time to sit with others when it's needed, to meet them, to talk. And they demonstrate genuine concern and authentic empathy in others' problems. And finally, the 5th one is that engaging leaders believe that it is their core mission to develop others and kindle team empowerment and capabilities. Remember, we said part of the leadership capabilities is that they are here, or their purpose, to serve others. They are here to help others. So they are here to train the employees, to mentor them, to coach them, to provide them with the resources they need to deliver and the opportunities to develop their skills and to grow. So to summarize it, engaging leadership, again, consists of 3 dimensions. They have a strong set of core guiding beliefs that guide the way they do things. They had the opportunity to learn from critical experiences. They've been through a lot, and these critical experiences help them to learn and shape themselves. And third, they display spark behaviors driven by their beliefs and expectations and experiences so that they can engage their organization. Now, I know that we've told you a lot. Now we want you to, again, log on to menti.com once more and answer another polling question for us. So this time, thinking about your own engaging leader style. Please do reflect about your own engaging leadership style. Which one out of the 5 behaviors we shared with you do you most need to develop over the coming 12 months? So as you're building your employee experience in 2021 and beyond, which out of the 5 behaviors that we shared with you, you believe you most need to develop over the coming 12 months? Please log in to menti.com and enter the code that you can see on the top of the page so that you can provide your voting. So staying grounded in communication, as well as stepping up and driving. Again, it's menti.com, and the code is on the top of the page. It's propel, step up and drive the ship. We'll wait for a few more seconds and see if we're going to receive any additional votes. Okay. So staying grounded and communication remains on the top. Energizing the organization is the least, most probably because a lot of the leaders in today's world already doing that. And we see that staying grounded and communicating with the organization, as well as serving others, the serving leadership style is what you believe is required for the coming period. Perfect. So what is the impact to the organization of identifying, developing, and retaining engaging leaders? Well, here also the data is also very clear for us. Engaging leaders have what we call a multiplier effect on their employee experience and organizational performance, because engaging leaders drive engaging employees. Team engagement can go up by as much as 21 points for employees reporting into an engaging leader who displays the engaging behaviors we've been talking about. And let's be very honest, the effect on the bottom line is going to be really significant. Even if the organization has just 37% of its leaders showing some engaging leader behaviors, we expect revenue to grow by a minimum of 2%. We expect voluntary turnover to drop by 3%. And in the organization that measure Net Promoter Score, we can see an average of an 18% increase. So what actions should organizations take to start finding and leveraging engaging leaders? As Concentric, we strongly believe that all leadership competency frameworks that date back before January 2020 are due for revision at this moment in time. Why? Because these need to reflect the behaviors needed to achieve the desired employee experience in a post-vaccine world, and subsequently shape the organization's strategy and performance in 2021. So to summarize it, in terms of managing the organization, leaders in 2021 and beyond should keep a focus on delivering results, despite the many distractions that remain in our current environment. They should think strategically, but at the same time nimbly towards the uncertain future. They should act very boldly in the face of a flood of information, and many times a flood of information that's contradictory and fuzzy. In terms of managing others, engaging leaders should empower others. They should build talent capacity within their organization. They should invest in their talent growth, both on the short term as well as on the long term. They have to keep the eye on the long-term investment in people. They should continue to inspire, to influence, to engage their population and the organization. And let us be very honest, caring, concern, optimism are now indispensable leadership skills for organization continuity. In today's world, leaders should create personal bonding, those personal relationships. They should build them, and they should be deep and emotional across a diverse set of people. In terms of personal management and managing themselves, leaders in 2021 should demonstrate higher levels of agility. And agility, resilience, are words you've been hearing throughout the last 12 months. And they require agility in the way they think and in the way they behave. They should be resilient and continue to experiment and test ideas. They should continue at the same time to stabilize the organization, manage stress levels, mitigate the impact of stress on themselves and on the organization, inject positivity and hope in the employees and in the organization. The second thing that's expected of engaging leaders now is that organizations also should immediately begin to capture stories of those engaging leaders who have successfully transformed their styles. They should document these, and they should document the impact the transformation has had on individual employees, on their teams, and on the business that they are leading. While it's all still fresh, we at Concentric suggest that you gather these stories into repositories, and later on, when the risk of backsliding threatens and going back into the old way and the old habit of doing things, these stories, you can disseminate them through multiple channels to remind your leaders of the great shifts they made and the value they added through those shifts to themselves, to the individuals they lead, and to their organization. So we encourage you to publicize those success stories in your town halls and in testimonial videos, as well as in your newsletters, in your trainings, and in your onboarding programs. Third, please invest in deepening these skills through the engaging leadership skills, through intensified leadership assessment and development programs at your organizations. There are established ways for assessing leaders and identifying whether they are engaging leaders and whether they possess the engaging leadership behaviors. And there are proven techniques for forging stronger links between the leaders and other stakeholders. So please do use more of these when you recruit leaders in the future and when you assess leaders for development. So from my end, to conclude, we believe that 2020 has definitely rehumanized the employee experience through a leadership focus on well-being of themselves and of their employees and of the organization. So sustainability of the leadership achievements in the last 12 months is vital in 2021 and beyond to improve the employee experience and to achieve your organizational success. Now, in the coming 5 minutes, I would like to hand over once again to my colleague Dima to summarize the key takeaways from today before leaving the floor to my colleague Dwayne and your questions. Dima, how would you summarize the key messages from today?
Thanks, Ilyas. So to sum up, we have 3 calls to action for any organization or even leaders or HR practitioners that are looking to really improve the employee experience right now. First and foremost, you need to identify and address the employee experience challenges that 2020 and 2021 presented. You have to meet the needs of your employees around both the physical and the mental health, safety, as well as well-being. Second of all, we need to start rethinking the timing and the frequency at which we gather feedback, at which we measure the entire employee experience. You need timely feedback that is generated or gathered very close enough to the moment or to the event or program that will enable you to pivot and plan accordingly. Gathering feedback more frequently through instruments such as pulse surveys or continuous dialogue workshops or programs is really critical to successfully meeting and managing the rapid pace of change we're seeing today. If your strategy is evolving, and right now, everyone's strategy is evolving, the odds are that your culture is evolving as well. So it's really important that you have the feedback and the data loops required to remain agile and adaptive so that you can continue delivering on experiences that are aligned to your strategy and ultimately to your business growth. Third, leaders, as Ilyas mentioned, have shown that they're capable of leading differently. And this needs to be sustained in the next stage of the crisis and for the years to come. The critical skills and capabilities needed by the leaders today and into the future include showing care and concern for people, being authentic, building deep levels of trust, projecting a sense of confidence in the direction of the organization, and showing up in ways that enable very deep and meaningful relationships with the people that they lead. So for leaders across all sectors, the attributes for successful leadership have really shifted permanently towards a more caring, confident, and connected style. So we encourage you to be thinking about the very specific experiences that are going to shape the desired culture of your organizations. Strategies are changing in just about every organization around the world right now in response to the challenges we are facing. So it's really important that you are intentional about the kind of experiences that you want your employees to have. And those experiences, again, should be aligned to the type of culture that you are trying to deliver. This is what will help you return and hopefully maintain growth ongoing. We really hope the session has been informative for you. We'd like to leave some time now to answer any questions you might have. So after you, Dwayne, what kind of questions do you have for us?
Great. Thank you so much, Ilyas and Dima. I think that was an excellent amount of information and insights that was gained from the research we did. We've had some very good questions coming through on the chat, and maybe to share some of those. Dima, I think this one specifically speaks to the employee experience. Obviously, top-line performance is critical to the MDs and the CEOs. So how can the employee experience help the commercial departments to really level up their frontline teams and improve top-line performance while at the same time improving employee experience?
Thanks, Dwayne. Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially what we want to achieve by improving the employee experience is identifying the segments, as you've mentioned, for example, the commercial department as an example, to identify the segments or departments that really matter, that are driving our accomplishment of the business strategy in and of itself. After we've identified them, we need to identify what kind of moments are important for these segments specifically in order to help us align their work experience with achieving the business strategy. So it's different for each segment, and this is the kind of work that we do to help organizations identify those moments that matter and segments that matter. But ultimately, through this deliberate exercise, what we're trying to achieve is an elevated and differentiated employee experience that helps us, deliver our business outcomes in a more productive and engaged manner.
Great. And if we are now engaging employees more frequently, how do we ensure that they feel that they're being heard? What are the specific actions or interventions that the company can display?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've moved more towards the concept of continuous dialogue, right? Gone are the days when we're running just one annual engagement survey. What's happening now is that the pace of collecting feedback is much more frequent. Obviously, there are much shorter surveys, but much more frequent, and they're much more deliberate, even in the design. So we start by hypothesizing the kinds of questions that we want to answer to begin with. And obviously, one way to go about, ensuring that the employees know that we're acting on this feedback is to keep them involved at all times. So always present the results to them, always be candid and transparent in, what are the pain points for the organization at the moment, and, involve them in action planning and taking actions for the future. What do they think, needs to be improved and how? The more you involve employees in this process, the more accountable they will feel for improving their own engagement levels. So this is not just, an HR responsibility or a senior leadership responsibility. That way, everybody owns their own engagement.
Excellent. Elias, maybe a question to you. One of the questions put by Al-Badr in our chat: do you think that companies and leaders started to give more attention to work-life balance and the well-being of their employees after the pandemic?
Definitely. So this is high on the agenda. The stress level working from home has been experienced differently by different levels of the organizations. Frankly speaking, we've seen initially that the more senior you are, the more stressed you were, and the more you had to put efforts in order to bring your whole organization together. We've seen a lot of our clients across the region and globally putting a lot of well-being programs. They've been measuring the well-being of their employees through a lot of pulse surveys, regular pulse surveys, every 2 to 3 months. And it has been targeted to specific segments of the population, basically. And a lot of programs have been put in place by many organizations.
Excellent. And, a lot of leaders, when you were talking about the engaging leadership traits, they were very results focused initially. Does this real care and compassion and concern for employees mean that leaders have to be less results focused and communicate results and the targets less to their employees?
Not at all. It's the other way around, I would say. They go both the same direction. So drive for results is topping the list of the behaviors that leaders have to demonstrate. In the first few weeks of the pandemic, organizations had much more focus on well-being of their employees, on reducing stress. However, as we moved into the new world, and now we're moving into a newer world, which is the post-vaccine world, the focus on driving the organization, the focus on achieving the results is by far much more required. However, it goes hand in hand and at the same importance as taking care of the employees, energizing the organization, engaging the population and taking care of the well-being of our employees. We drive in today's world results by caring for others, by showing compassion, by communicating much more frequently, by removing all the barriers and all the walls, the physical walls that we had in the offices previously. No, they both go at the same speed in the same direction at this moment in time.
Excellent. So maybe a last question looking at the future. Faraz mentions in the chat that teaming was a large part of creating that employee experience, and with people working remotely and virtually, how do we then look at the employee experience and the team dynamic in terms of enhancing that in the new world of work?
So this is a new science at this moment in time that we're all across the world looking at. During the pandemic, different geographies dealt with working remotely differently. On a personal level, I've been on calls with extremely senior people, and I've never noticed how affected other people are. Being in the UAE, we were much lucky than others in the way we went through the pandemic, but others have really struggled. Different geographies, different employee cohorts are dealing with the situation differently. So different organizations, again, depending on their employee segments, they're looking into specific targeted program, targeting their employee segments. And Dima, if you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of teams, you know, there were a lot of initiatives that different organizations have taken, particularly when we look at best employers. It was a combination of how do I strengthen the team spirit, but also how do I not overwhelm them, right? So some companies, for example, did 4 days a week. They would meet on a daily basis in the morning. It would be like a morning huddle. They'd connect, they'd speak, but also they'd limit 1 day a week, let's say, for example, Thursday, where they'd say, okay, there are no more phone calls today, no more Zoom or, you know, Teams meetings and calls today, just to give everyone a sense of break. So I guess it's really different for each organization, depending on what they would like to achieve. Inserting, but also putting a cap on the number of meetings. Leveraging technology played a massive role in building that cohesion across teams, you know, enhancing the enabling infrastructure, the tools and the shared drives made it much more possible for teams to work remotely.
Great. And maybe a final question. We know that because of the situation and the global economics, a lot of organizations have had to maybe restructure the way they work and their operations. How do we then balance that off with enhancing the employee experience? Sorry, Elias, I think you're on mute.
Apologies. So as we said, we believe that 2020 has rehumanized the employee experience. And there are certain business decisions that have to be made, and organizations are going to continue making those decisions. These cannot be stopped. It is how you implement the new activities, the new decisions, the new structuring. Because the way you do things is a communication by itself. So if you do it with care, if you show compassion, if you communicate the reasons behind those decisions, how not only they're going to impact the organization positively, but how it's going to have also an impact on the overall organization and on the employees, that will have a great positive impact.
Excellent. Well, thank you again to our speakers, to our audience, to our facilitators, to the Federal Authority for Government Human Resources. We hope this has been a great informative session for individuals to understand the new world of work in terms of the employee experience and the new expectations of leaders, organizations, and of course their HR business partners to really ensure a success going forward, understanding how important the employee experience and engagement and leadership is. Thank you once again to our hosts, and thank you to our audience.